Watch this.
Version of the 208 today. Normal news coverage isn't what we set out to do with the 208. We tried to keep it to the finite areas of the area. Crimes, car crashes, combustible condos, we've kept our distance from those things. That's not really our thing. Unless that thing poses a danger to the public, which is kind of where we are today with the Four Corners fire, which is happening right now west of Cascade. People are being told to evacuate from homes along the western side of Lake Cascade. That fire started Saturday, sparked by a lightning strike. And after a slow start, it's really picked up over the last several days and has now burned nearly 5,600 acres and is heading south toward more populated areas. We're looking at video taken yesterday on West Mountain in Cascade. It's on the west side of the lake. You see the fire cresting over the ridge and how close it is to homes on the mountain. And jumping that ridge last night is what caused these evacuation orders to be in place. A few hours later, this is from the east side of the lake, same side of the city as Cascade. No containment, by the way, of this fire at this point. We'll keep you updated if that changes, but I want to give you a little bit of a brush up here on what it looks like and how big this is. So 5,600 acres, how big is that? This is the burn scar here of the Four Corners fire right now. 5,600 acres, basically about 56 football fields. That's how that looks. Lookout Peak is your mark on this map, kind of give you an idea where it is. We got Gem County down here, we've got Adams County over here, and Valley County this way. Most of this fire burning right now in Adams County. This is the Cascade, Lake Cascade off to the right. You can kind of see the city over here. So it is pretty big, 5,600 acres. Going to give you an idea of how far away from most of these areas are. Way up here, let me show you what this looks like. We've got Tamarack, about that far from the burn scar there. You can see it way up here. This is where the Tamarack Resort is. That's where that is taking place. Poison Creek Campground, moving over to Donnelly. But jumping over this ridge here, if we get a closer look, we can kind of see what that looks like. Lookout Peak, again, the lake over here. That's where the fire jumped and causing all of these people down here, down here near Carbarton and on the western side of the lake here. A lot of homes down there. We're not exactly sure how many homes are in this area, but all of this area is under an evacuation order. I'm going to kind of show you what this looks like right now. All of the homes, it'd be north of Campbell Creek Road. That's the map there. So all of this area here is under evacuation. That's a ready, set, go phase. This area outlined in yellow is under the go phase right now, meaning you need to be out of there. Everything else south of this, that would be under the ready plan. Excuse me. Everybody in this area here, that's where you're kind of getting ready. Have stuff on standby just in case that evacuation order for the go phase is spread to the south, because you can see how close it is to the fire, especially in this area. Not a lot of homes along in here, more of that kind of concentrated down here in the ready phase, but we're going to keep an eye on that as we get through the rest of this evening, and you can kind of see how this plays out. City of Cascade on the other side, that's where Brenda Rodriguez is right now, and you can see we are just kind of, or Joe, I should say, is in this area, in the Campbell Creek area where that boat ramp is. That's kind of where he is, and we're going to talk to Joe a little bit, but I want to give you an idea of how this is spread out and how close it is to some of these populated areas right along the western edge of Cascade Lake, or Lake Cascade. And if we move up this road, that's how far we are to Tamarack Resort. All right, so let's do that. We sent Joe Paris up into that area earlier today. Right now he's on that eastern side of Cascade Lake in that evacuation area right now. Joe, is that kind of where I'm describing you, kind of near the Campbell Creek boat ramp? Is that where you are?
Yeah, so the Campbell Creek boat ramp is actually just past us this way. If you go a little bit there, and you'll actually be able to see, and actually you'll see right now there's going to be a dump truck that goes back that way. They're starting to put some fire assets and some resources towards that way. They just have a little bit of an informal gathering, but yeah, by that boat ramp. Right behind me though, you'll see Lake Cascade right there, and we are actually just southwest of it right now. The fire itself though is actually a little bit further north than where we are. So as we come through this way, we're talking about 3 miles up that way north is where the fire's burning right now. So the area that we're in here right now, we're in that set zone. The people that were really close to where we are right now are waiting for a phone call. And it's interesting, we know where the fire is, it's over deep in the distance. If we walk across to the other side of the road right here, you'll be able to see kind of in the distance there are some cabins, there are some permanent homes. So these are the areas right here that we're talking about where people live, and they're waiting right now. Again, Brian said it's a ready, set, go formula. Ready meaning you really start preparing. Set means you are waiting for that phone call, and go means you need to get out of there right now. About 30 minutes ago, about an hour ago, we were actually talking to a family that lives up in that area, and they described really over the last several days kind of waiting and watching, seeing the smoke and seeing what's going on about 3 miles north from here. And it's a little bizarre because it's like a perfectly blue sky day here right over the lake, which is interesting because if you come up Highway 55, you see a lot of that smoke. But as photographer Logan and I came over here, I mean, it looks like a really nice day on the lake, except for the fact that there's a huge fire right around the corner. Not a lot of recreators out here either. But there are people right now that are packing up their valuables, and we spoke with them a few minutes ago. One of them telling me that it feels very surreal to go through your house.
It's really a strange sensation to walk through your house and go, what do I need to take? Go from room to room, and what is valuable to me? Like, you have to do an immediate assessment on what you would miss that you could not replace. So it's very strange. I've never had that happen before.
So that woman we spoke with, she actually was the one that called in one of the first fires last Saturday. She said she and her husband were actually up in that area. They noticed the smoke plume, they called it in, and they noticed about 20 minutes later, there was actually some survey planes that came down. She says later in the evening, they actually saw smoke jumpers jump down into that area. Now that was back about a week ago last Saturday, and she says on Thursday, Friday of this week, that's when it really started getting serious. Yesterday, about 2:30 local time, she said they got an idea that, as we've heard reported, the fire started to come down over that ridge. So Brian, people in this area, there's not a lot left because most people are either part-time residents that aren't here or they've already gone. Some people though are waiting for a phone call they hope they don't get.
Yeah, I guess they would be. I kind of misspoke there. The ready, set, go. I meant the people south of where you are right now are in that set phase, not the ready phase. That would be a little bit more lax. But yeah, everybody kind of on high alert in that area. We don't know exactly how many homes are in there. We tried to get that number from Valley County Sheriffs, but they don't have that number available just yet. As you mentioned, a lot of part-time residents up there, a few full-time residents, but the populated area is kind of near Joe. All right, Joe, thank you very much. I kind of want to give you an idea. As he mentioned, the last couple of days, it's really started to pick up. When this thing started at about, well, Saturday evening, as I mentioned, it was about 73 acres, and it was kind of concentrated right just north and around Lookout Peak, and it hadn't jumped the ridge at that point, but in the last couple of days, it has grown in size, and again, jumped over the ridge as of last night, which is what is causing these evacuations to be in place right now. As of 8 o'clock last night, all of this area here has been told, you're in the go phase, so as she said, kind of hard to go through your house and kind of decide what's important to you and what's not, but they are doing that right now as we speak. So we do know that this fire is moving south. Help by winds, that's a big question, and the weather is going to be playing a big part in how this fire is being fought. Let's get over to meteorologist Sophia Bliss right now to give us an idea on how much the wind is going to help or hurt the firefighting efforts. Sophia?
Right, so there are a couple of things at play here right now. We do have a little bit of a breeze pushing from the northwest in that area. However, the flip side of that is that there are some storms moving through, and we'll get to those in a second, but those outflow boundaries from those storms, because they're not bringing a lot of moisture, could push the other direction for McCall in the Cascade area. So if we expect the winds would be pushing right towards where the firefighters are hoping that it doesn't. The outflow boundaries could push it the other way. However, it could also fan the flames. But for right now, the winds are looking rather calm in the area. So we can expect some of those to pick up slightly. These are the storms I was talking about. You can see very energetic, lots of lightning, and some of those outflow boundaries could push this way into the Cascade area. But those storms are not bringing a lot of moisture. They have a lot of lightning with them, in fact. And let's just look at how some of that moisture will stack up. Nothing for McCall. If we go through the night tonight, you can see 0.06 inches for Stanley. And as we go through even the whole rest of the weekend, where we do expect some more storms to move through the mountain areas, you can see just not a lot of moisture in any of those areas. We do expect the smoke to linger in the mountain areas, though, Brian.
All right, thank you very much, Sophie. I just want to reiterate, too, the road closures in the air, they're in place right now. So as interesting as it might be to kind of drive up there and kind of maybe take a closer look at it, please don't, because obviously you're going to impede some firefighting efforts. Anybody in this go zone, I also want to mention this, as we found out, there is an evacuation zone happening at Kelly's Whitewater Park, which is long, just on the other side of Cascade here. That's where they are setting up. There it is on the map, Kelly's Whitewater Park. So if anybody in that area is looking for a place to kind of stay temporarily until they find out what's going on, that's where they're kind of putting people. And as we heard over the last hour or so, not too many people there as of now, but that could pick up over the next few hours or so. We'll be right back. As of midnight tonight, Idaho's criminal 6-week abortion ban will officially be in effect, meaning all abortions after 6 weeks will be illegal. And those who provide one can be both criminally and civilly liable. Next week, Idaho's trigger law is going to go into effect, meaning nearly all abortions will be illegal in Idaho, except in those narrow cases where the mother's life is at risk or in cases of rape and incest that have been reported to law enforcement. However, there's still a chance that law, the trigger law, could be put on pause. As part of the Department of Justice's lawsuit against the state of Idaho, which was filed earlier this month, they've asked for an injunction until there's some conclusion to the case. On Monday, a federal judge will listen to arguments from the DOJ and Idaho's lawyers and will decide whether that injunction will be put in place or if that law will be allowed to go into effect 3 days later. Earlier this month, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced they did plan to sue or have sued Idaho over its ban, saying it violates the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, or EMTALA. The state says, well, their law allows ways for hospitals to avoid being in violation of EMTALA, so the law should be enforceable. Something else to keep on your radar, excuse me, with a record $2 billion surplus, Governor Little has said a special session to decide what to do with that money isn't really off the table when hearing talk that it probably a little more on the table than we expected. On Tuesday, the governor's office told us that decision, could happen and could come any day. He also told the Associated Press it should happen. The discussion may also center around how to combat inflation. Those are a couple items they could talk about should that special session come to fruition. One question we've gotten several times over the last couple of days in regards to that surplus and what to do with it. How do we get to this $2 billion surplus? We have asked that question to Idaho's budget director, Alex Adams, after the numbers came out a few weeks ago, and the answer is pretty simple.
The main drivers are income tax, sales tax, and corporate income tax. Corporate income certainly was the star performer. Businesses are choosing to relocate to Idaho or expand their businesses in Idaho. But sales tax was up 10%, income tax was up 6%. So it really is across the board.
So basically, it's more people moving into the area. We've got more corporate taxes because of that, and of course, more income taxes. And, well, more people buying stuff. That means more sales tax being put into our coffers. David asks a great question as well. Is the bill still on the ballot for the legislators to call themselves back? It's on the ballot, I'm sure. This idea actually made its way through the legislature back in 2021 as a Senate joint resolution. That idea that the legislator wanted to give themselves the ability to call themselves back into session without the governor's approval, because that's how the Constitution sets it up right now. Only the governor can call the legislators back into an extraordinary session, they call that. But they want to have 60% of lawmakers in both the House and the Senate to be able to call themselves back. Right now, that's not how it works. In order for that to become law, though, 2/3 of the legislature needed to agree to that, as it would also change the Constitution. It did pass the Senate, did not pass the House with that 2/3 majority, meaning the governor's still the only one who can call lawmakers back. Even should he choose to do so, it's not just, well, we can come in and talk about whatever we want to talk about. Under state constitution as well, those topics have to be narrowed down. It's something the governor decides and selects and tells the lawmakers, this is what you will talk about, and generally this is how long you have to talk about it. But this is how it all plays out when it comes to, well, do we talk about this more than we did for the 3 months we were in session? All right. Finally, we got this question from Bill and Jerome about the drawdown happening at Lucky Peak. We talked about this earlier this week, generating a lot of follow-up questions. He asked, what does the Army Corps of Engineers mean when they say there's not another time to do this? Why can't they just draw down Lucky Peak like in January, even December, when people aren't out there recreating? It's a question we reached back out to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation and asked that question. They told us this has to happen before the end of the irrigation season. That's why. Can't happen after. And that usually happens between September and October. This year, they're planning for it to happen at the end of September. They add outside of this window, there's not enough time to release it out of Lucky Peak to accomplish the drawdown without wasting water, that is. So in other words, they want it to come out of Lucky Peak, but they don't want it just run down the river into the Snake River. They want to be able to put it to use. Plus, they say they can't release any water without stakeholder input. So there's a lot of layers here. Water rights in Idaho are not an easy topic to discuss. There's a lot of layers. So from now until the end of September, you can expect water levels to drop at Lucky Peak from 1 to 3 feet per day. "20 years ago this week, back on Tuesday, then Governor Dirk Kempthorne, helped open the Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial right along the Boise River, and it remains the only such memorial in the United States. It was an idea born in 1995 when an Anne Frank traveling exhibit came through town. So many people came to see it, well, it inspired the Idaho Human Rights Education Center to build a permanent one. On Tuesday, the city honored the memorial's emerald anniversary with dignitaries on hand, including Boise Mayor Laura McClain and a small crowd in attendance as well. But for those who stop by on, well, just a normal Tuesday like we did, the real impact can be felt by spending some time exploring the whole memorial and getting a reminder while you're there. Despite the evil that spawned the need for such a memorial, there is still a need to believe most people still good at heart.
This is a milestone moment for the Idaho Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial. Today we mark 20th anniversary. More importantly though, of how important the place is today.
I think it's beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. It shows both the fragility of our own selves, but the beauty and strength that we can have in humanity.
We recognize that the memorial is not a Holocaust monument. Anne is there as a reminder, as she so captured in her diary, what happens in a community when there are members who are targeted, when they have been deemed the other, marginalized and demeaned within a community. The memorial wraps its arms around Anne, and now she feels safe to come out of hiding. That's what we need to be as a community, as a state, and as a country, where we can embrace one another, coming together, and bring those who have been marginalized out of hiding.
It's nearly an acre, a garden of statues and stone.
Let's read this one. It's Jimmy Carter.
But what stands out are the quotes etched into them.
We become not a melting pot, but a beautiful mosaic. Different people, different beliefs, different yearnings, different hopes, different dreams. So it's saying we're all different, right?
One of the quotes that reminds us, those who cannot remember their history are condemned to repeat it. Are we repeating elements that we thought we had defeated? These are reminders that maybe our history is not done, that the work is not done. And that's what today is about for us. Marking and celebrating 20 years, but also acknowledging there's more work to do. Our goal is that we learn from history so that it becomes our guide for our actions in the future.
You guys kind of see a theme with all these?
And it's about teaching those lessons
What are they all kind of talking about?
to our future.
Yeah, it's kind of, you're right. It does have a kind of theme about kindness and listening, huh?
Maggie Eben brought her kids here for the first time.
Because human rights and kindness are important. Remembering what happened, but remembering that kindness can change the world. And that you have to have empathy and understanding of what other people went through so you can truly understand other people.
So I like to believe that the memorial for all of us in the community, it calls out our better angels. Where will we as a community, as a state, as a nation be 20 years from today?
I hope we continue to learn from it and grow and make progress to welcome others to our communities and understand our shared experiences and where it's different and where we can express kindness. I hope it grows.
Well, Dan told us that Tuesday, Boise Parks and Rec estimates 120,000 people visit the memorial every year, meaning about 2.4 million have visited since its opening back in 2002. And it has grown since as well. In 2015, they added the Legacy Garden. In 2018, they added the Marilyn Schuler Classroom for Human Rights. And this fall, the Wadsmith Center for Human Rights, which is what the Idaho Human Rights Education Center became. Well, they plan to build a new $3 million building dedicated to human rights education right next to the memorial. All right, before we get out of here, let's check back in with Joe Paris, who's up near Cascade on the west side of the lake. Anything new in the last 20 minutes, Joe?
Yeah, actually, Brian, since the last time I talked to you at the top of the hour, you'll see that there's a smoke plume that is now way more visual than it had been all afternoon. There's no science behind this, to be clear, but just what I'm watching here in this area over the last several hours, this new plume that you're looking at right now seems to be pushing back towards where we are, so that means the wind would be swirling kind of east. Now, just as a little bit of a locator, I'm actually standing right on the banks right now of Lake Cascade. You can see the lake here, right here. We're west of it, and just a little bit of contrast. You'll see in the distance, it's a beautiful blue day. If you look out that way, clear skies. But as we look back towards where the fire's burning about 2-3 miles from here, Brian, you can get the feeling that the smoke and some of it is starting to move towards our way. That's something that residents here are really worried about, which way the wind will start to push this fire as we get closer to nighttime. We're going to keep an eye on this. I have no idea exactly what's going on with that plume. We're trying to get some more information, but Brian, it's still an active situation here, and I understand the families that are very close to where we are still waiting. They're waiting for a phone call that could possibly tell them to leave because they're unsafe in their own homes.
All right, thank you very much. So not to speak out of turn, though, but it looks like those are hot spots. Some of these embers kind of go and spark new fires. So again, yeah, hopefully just keep an eye on that and it doesn't go further than where it is right now. All right, that brings up this question that we got. Somebody texted into the Four Corners fire being affected, or is it affecting traffic on Highway 55? We looked, not really anything other than what's happening in Smith's Ferry. There is construction there, and that usually slows things down, but it is not really close to Highway 55 on the other side of Lake Cascade. This question from Bill: these new recklessly drafted and now Idaho state abortion laws simply political as well as religiously motivated? State government overreach into all of our private lives, period. It should be a very serious concern for all of us. If this is part of the new Republican Party's idea of less government intrusion, count me out, says Bill. Sounds like we're being overtaxed. If we have such a huge surplus, they should lower our taxes. Janie, I guarantee there's a plan for that coming up. Or maybe because we need to spend more on infrastructure with more people moving in. Anyone want to bet a special session will be called before the November election so the Republican legislators can give taxpayers a pre-election tax rebate? I'm just going to leave that there.